Hello, everyone. Today is day 13 of our 30 days of watercolor flowers, and today we are painting goldenrod. I think goldenrod is a beautiful, very underrated flower, so we are giving it the justice it deserves today by painting this beautiful, fluffy flower. So think about goldenrod in general, like the entire branch is going to be kind of triangular. So the top is going to have a longer point, and we're going to get thicker and wider as we come out. And then think of the little branches coming off like big, fluffy arms. All of these flowers are on a branch and they are coming off the main branch. And when it's all put together, it is a big, very fluffy looking yellow branch full of flowers. So instead of focusing on painting an individual flower, we are focusing on painting a whole branch of these flowers, because goldenrod is really special because of the way it's bunched together and because of its fluffy yellow look. So we're really going to lean into that today. The branches coming off the main branch are not uniform. They are wild and chaotic and going in all different directions. So we're also going to play into that as well. And then the leaves are long and they have a rough edge similar to a rose, but I would say a little bit thinner in shape. Now I'm going to pick up my brightest yellow color, lemon yellow, and I'm going to make a mixture on my palette that is not too watery, not too pigmented, kind of more middle of the road. And I'm just going to dab onto the paper little dots, bigger dots, a mixture of dots to create these fluffy arms of the goldenrod. So think of them as a long cone. So one end is going to be pointier and smaller. And then as it gets towards our imaginary stem, it is going to be wider and more full. So all of these little long cones are going to be coming off this imaginary stem in very chaotic directions. We don't want it to be uniform or predictable. Even like some of these, as I get towards the middle, I'm trying to paint towards myself. So for this one, for example, I wanted it to look like it was coming more from the center of the stem and not just from the edge. And then I'm also, if you can see, maintaining some separation between each of these little arms. So you can tell that they are coming off individually, but as they get closer to my stem that I'm imagining right down the center, I am blending them together a little bit more, and we'll be able to define them even more when we add the contrasting color of yellow and the greenery underneath. I also want the dots that I'm creating within the arm to have a little bit of separation as well. So maintaining some of the white space, but having some of those little dots blend together will make it look like it's all a bunch of fluffy flowers that are together on a branch. As I'm coming down towards the bottom, my arms are getting more chaotic. They're getting fuller and they're reaching out a little bit farther to the left and the right on my paper. Keep in mind that each of these arms that we're making all of these dots to create, all of these dots are representing little flower buds. So we want them to be fluffy. We want them to have a little bit of distinction on their own, but we are not specifically painting each flower. So we do kind of want them to blend together and have the idea of a bunch of flowers. Now I'm going to pick up some yellow ochre, and it's pretty much straight from the well, not very watery, and we're going to tap in the color into this bright yellow that we've created while everything is still wet. The less water you have when you're doing this tapping color with the higher concentration, the less it will blend in. So we want a little bit of bleed, but we don't want it to overtake our light yellow. So if you ever feel like you have too much water, if it's not pigmented enough, just tap your brush onto your paper towel or your rag. So I'm focusing this color under the arms. So this is giving a lot of shape to our arms. We're seeing the different directions that these branches are going in, and it's adding a lot of needed contrast and depth to very flat, plain yellow flowers. We are going to let that totally dry so that we get less bleeding when we add the greenery up in those branches. So I'm mixing up sap green, yellow ochre, and a little bit of red to get a nice deep green color. We're not going to place the stem up into the branches yet because I do really want all of that yellow to dry a little bit more. So I'm placing the main branch just at the bottom for now, adding a couple of areas of texture and then going straight into my leaves. So I'm using the very tip of my brush, very light pressure, to add a stem coming off my main stem and then going straight into these two-stroke leaves. So how I paint these leaves, I use very light pressure with the tip of my brush at the beginning, push down on the body of my brush and drag to create the shape and the length of the leaf that I want, and then bring it back to the tip of my brush and light pressure for the end. Then I do the same thing on the other side, leaving some space in the middle for a vein, and then to create that jagged edge for this specific type of leaf, I'm just pulling some of the paint out on each side in little tiny corners, little points to create that jagged edge. I also wanted to balance out the bottom by adding those little leaves down there as well. So now we're going to bring the stem, the main stem, up through the center of our goldenrod and start adding the stems that are coming off the main stem. I'm mostly focusing on letting the greenery just peek through because we want the flowers to be the main focus. Now, it's dried enough that the greenery is not going crazy, but it's not too dry that it's not bleeding a little bit. I like the bleeding moment, but if you don't want any bleed, just let yours totally, completely dry. I'm also focusing the greenery underneath where we've painted the arms. So think of these green stems coming off the main branch, and the flowers are just growing up and on top of the branches, creating the arm. That's what I'm trying to portray with where I'm placing the greenery. So focusing it just towards the bottom, kind of where we've got the yellow ochre painted there as well. Now I've picked up some more sap green in a higher concentration with less water, and I'm going in to add the shadow color. Now, before I added this in, the greenery looks really great. It's just really flat. So I'm adding this color to give it more depth and shadow and interest. Don't be afraid of harsh lines, but if a line is ever too harsh, you can go back over it with clean water and smooth it out a little bit. I'm also going through under all of the branches to add some contrast as well. If you ever have an area that has bled too much and you're not happy with how it looks, just rinse your brush really well and get it to the point where it's damp but not too wet. And you can scrub and pick up some of that pigment, tap it on a paper towel, and then you can even put some color back in. So I'm going to put in a little bit more yellow back in that spot because I felt like it got a little bit carried away with the green and I wanted it to be back to yellow. And with that, our goldenrod is finished. So the only thing left to do is to add it to our day 13 spot on our watercolor flower guide. I thought this was the perfect addition to our guide because it adds a lot of texture to our bouquets. Thank you so much for being here today with me while we painted day 13, the goldenrod. I will see you all tomorrow for day 14. Bye.